Hello, Ken. This is Greg. It is Tuesday, February the 15th, the year 2022. You notice I don't have any points to make here on the board today. Kind of a bittersweet day, let's put it that way. We got quite a bit read in class today. My class will finish the book tomorrow, and then I'll be taking a test on Thursday and starting to watch the movie as well. In these two chapters that we read today, of course, this is the climax coming up here. Actually the second chapter we read today was part of the climax, and I don't remember if I put this on the board yesterday or not. I thought I did. In fact, I'm almost sure I did. The first climax was in the courtroom with Atticus and Tom Robinson and Bob Ewell. And the second one I left blank. I didn't tell the kids where it took place, but it's with the Finch family, particularly Jim and Scout and Bob Ewell and Boo Radley. And of course they meet there in the dark I'm not sure you wouldn't call it a woods, but it's the path that the kids were walking on. Wrong thing there. So anyway, today there was just a few things. The first chapter, you get Mrs. Tootie and Mrs. Tootie and Fruity, whatever their last name is, the two old sisters, spinsters, who are deaf. And I pointed out to my kids today, I said, there's a reason why this chapter is necessary to the book. As you recall the story, the previous Halloween, the kids in the community, they had gotten together and they had taken all Miss Tootie and Fruity's furniture and taken it outside her house and taken it down to her basement. And the women were deaf, and they started telling the story. I know who it was. It wasn't anybody from Macomb. It was somebody who had a different dialect or whatever. And I heard a truck pull up. And of course, they didn't hear anything. They slept through it all. But I thought it was pretty humorous. I enjoyed the part where Heck Tate went and got the hound dogs, and they sniffed around. They went from the front door to the basement door, and he took them back. And on the third time, Heck Tate figured it out, and he looked in the basement. There was all their furniture. So apparently that was enough for the residents, particularly the mothers of Macomb, that they're going to organize something for Halloween this year to keep the kids out of trouble. And I told the kids, I said, this seems like an odd chapter, but in reality it is a necessity, because it gives us some explanation why they were having that Halloween party in the school, and which they normally wouldn't have had. And if they wouldn't have had it, then Jim and Scout would not have been in the position where they were, so that Bob Ewell could attack them. Also, Harper Lee went kind of into detail describing Scout's outfit, which was the giant ham, which you can see right there from the movie. And I told the kids, I said, guys, just keep this in mind. This is not, things in books just don't show up randomly, and they don't have purpose. A good writer doesn't anyway. And all the things that we've encountered in this book have been leading us to this point where we are right now. It's the second climax. And if Scout wouldn't have been in that ham costume, it's very likely she'd have been squeezed to death by a drunken Bob Ewell. But it made their walking much more difficult. They may have been able to run at an earlier stage and gotten out of that place and gotten out of danger. So we started that today. Excuse me, I need a drink of water. We got out of that today. I've got kind of a raspy voice again today, and this happened the last 2 years. We have to wear masks now all day in school, and this has been a common occurrence for me. When I've had to wear the mask, I get a raspy voice, and I start losing my voice certainly by the end of the week. Of course, I'm getting up there in years as well, as you well know, and my voice is weaker now than it was just a couple of years ago. I've got a basketball game I'm broadcasting tonight, so I'm hoping to have my voice back by then. But I've been drinking water in class. I've been reading quite a bit today in all of my classes. And I'm hoping this raspiness leaves by 7:30 tonight. But anyway, wherever I was, oh yeah, the kids, you know, the ham costume and the walk through the woods, the Halloween party that was organized at the school. And Alexandra had this one thing which I got to explain to the kids. She said, I felt like someone had just walked over my grave, which that's an idiom, you know, that's a Southern thing more than anything else. And I asked the kids, and I had one bright student who actually figured it out. He said it's like a sense of danger, or I think he even used the word foreboding. That was my word, but I think he used it as well. And I told him, see, that's a good explanation. It's just a saying, you know, that people have had. And Alexander just had a sensation, a premonition, if you will, that something was not right, and you know, there was danger that lied ahead. Then they got to the part where they're at the pageant and at the party, and of course the part with Scout falling asleep in her ham costume is not in the movie, but is a hilarious part. I can see Judge Taylor out back, standing here with his hands on his knees and just laughing his head off. And you know, I can get a good picture of that as he realized what had happened, because Scout came running out, you know, onto the platform at the finale. You know, even though her name had been called, you know, a couple times, at least three times before that. And then we go into the next chapter, and this is you know, after the Halloween party. Scout is wearing her ham costume home with her, and she which impedes her walking, and she's barefooted. She said she left her shoes in the school. You know, again, that was no big deal. All the kids probably went barefoot most of the time. In fact, going back to that story with the Mrs. Tootie and Fruity, it said in there, and the kids kind of looked at me strange, it said in there, after the dogs came and Sheriff Tate realized what had happened, said you couldn't find a kid without shoes on around there until all the dogs were taken away. And you know, I just had to explain to them, I mean, like even when I was growing up, during summertime anyway, we went out barefooted most of the time. I'm assuming you did too. And these kids, even, you know, it said earlier in the book, even the kids like after the first day of school, a lot of kids came barefoot to school. I mean, that's what you're in the South, it's warm and all that. But anyway, I brought up to them something that I think I brought up to you, showed to you as a reminder yesterday as well. I brought up the bookends things here. You know, and Jim breaks his arm at the elbow, and then Boo Radley coming out as well. And I said, guys, this is where, you know, you're able to put things together. As we were reading through this chapter, I had a couple of students, I mean, they put it together just like that. I mean, they were able to make the connection, you know, of Jim breaking his arm. And they figured out that it was Boo Radley who saved them. Now, I've been online and I've read some serious discussion among people about this chapter, what happened here. And there are some people that I think are fairly intelligent, except in this case, that they believe that it was Boo Radley who was attacking the kids and not Bob Ewell, in spite of the evidence in the text that would prove otherwise. You know, at the end chapter, which we're going to get to tomorrow, you know, Hecate tells Atticus, well, Bob Ewell fell on his knife. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow. And that's what some people actually believe happened. They don't believe that Boo Radley killed Bob Ewell, which poses some problems, which, again, we'll talk about more of that tomorrow. Tomorrow will be our last episode on here. So going to end up with 25 episodes on lessons. And again, some really strange conversations going on online that I've read about literary people who disagree about what had happened. I think it's as clear as a bell, you know what happened here. They're in the woods, or walking home in the dark. Jim hears a sound, and they have different explanations that they're giving for it. Scout thinks it's just her ham outfit that she's wearing that's causing all the scraping sounds. And, Jim tries to, he tries to make something up to take the fear out of Scout. Jim says, I think it's Cecil Jacobs, because remember Cecil scared them on the way to the Halloween party, and he thought he was trying to follow up there. But anyway, the part in the book, where they're walking home in the dark, and at the point where the sound, for a long time, the sound behind them would stop when they quit walking. But at the point where the sound did not stop, and then they heard some running towards them, Jim yelled, Scout, get out, run away, whatever words he said, get out, you're in danger. He didn't say you're in danger, but he told Scout to, run, quick as you can, escape. I forgot where I was going with that, but I'm sure it'll come back to me here, probably when I'm asleep tonight. But anyway, at that point, I know where I was going with that. At that point, Bob Ewell attacks Jim and Scout. And Jim tries to help. He tries to push Scout away. She falls over. And we see that in the movie. She falls over, and of course, it's an awkward thing that she has there, and she's tremendously off balance and stuff like that. And she hears some scuffling and some fighting going on, some grunting. And Jim tries to push her away again, but then she says he's jerked away. And she heard a scream, and she heard a cracking sound. At that point, I had a couple of kids. That was Jim's arm breaking, wasn't it? And so I had to compliment them on their astuteness on that part there. Yes, that was Jim's arm breaking. That was the bookend to the very first sentence of the chapter. And then a really kind of horrifying part after that happened. She didn't hear Jim anymore, but somebody grabbed her. And just, if she wouldn't have had this outfit on, he probably would have squeezed her to death. Probably just strangled her, although not necessarily around her neck, would have probably killed her. But the ham outfit probably saved her life in this case. And then she said this was going on. He was squeezing me. It was hard to breathe. And suddenly he was jerked away. Now, obviously, this was Boo Radley who did that. You heard some, shuffling going on. You heard some fighting and stuff. And then after a while, she only heard one person left, and that person was breathing. I pointed out to my students, you have to go back to the first part, which to them was dreadfully just boring. The first part of the book, the first 11 chapters. And if you remember, the second time Boo Radley got in trouble, he had stabbed his dad in the leg, pulled the scissors out, wiped it off, and just continued cutting out from the newspapers. Where did they send Boo Radley? Well, they kept him in the courthouse in the basement, and it was all damp and mildewy there. And finally, they made Mr. Radley take Boo out for his own safety because it was affecting his lungs. And if you remember this part here, where after he had saved Jim and Scout, when he had killed Bob Ewell, then all that Scout heard was a heavy breathing. And it's like, she said, he went over to the tree, and even though she couldn't see him, it was like he was leaning against a tree trying to get his breath. Well, that was all the years after effects of him being cooped up in the courthouse in the mildewy and the moldy and the damp basement. And obviously that's what he suffered from, from that time until this time. So Scout, she finally gets the ham off of her, and she goes out to the street, and she sees somebody carrying Jim back to to their house, and she doesn't know who is carrying him, but she does see Jim's arm at an awful angle. Scout makes it back to the house, and she asks Atticus first, and Alexandra, or maybe Calpurnia, but then the doctor shows up, and Scout is very concerned about Jim. And she asked everybody, is Jim dead? She's thinking, he was attacked and he was dead. And everybody assures her that she is not dead. The doctor says, no, he's got a bump on his head, and just like you do, Scout, because she had obviously a bump on her head. That doesn't show up in the movie. But he has a broken arm. And Alexandra, she's kind of hilarious in this part. She is so shaken up that it's time to, they take the ham off of Calpurnia, or excuse me, they take the ham is taken off of Scout, and I think she took it off herself. But she has hardly anything on underneath. Jim still had her dress, so she just had her undergarments on. And Calpurnia was so upset at what had happened that she inadvertently dressed Scout in her overalls. Something that Alexandra would never have done under any circumstances. She disapproved of them wholeheartedly, but you could tell she was extremely agitated, extremely upset and nervous, that this had happened. Anyway, Scout is finally allowed to go into Jim's bedroom, and she sees that his arm is all crooked at an angle. The doctor assures her he's going to be okay, but his arm's going to be sticking out for some time. He's going to have it in some type of cast or whatever. It's probably going to be sticking out from him. And I guess he finally assures Scout that Jim is not going to die. Scout said the person who carried Jim back to the house was standing there in the room, and she didn't know who he was. She just assumed he was some farm guy, some farmer who I think she said was probably at the pageant and probably at the Halloween party that night, and he must have heard him going through there. I've got one page left in this chapter, so this chapter 28, and I'll have to finish that tomorrow, and then I'll read 29. And again, this book has 320. This particular book has 323 pages, and I'm on 307 now, so we will definitely get finished. So I'm going to go ahead and just look ahead and just describe what's going on. Hecate shows back up. What is it, Heck? This is the very end of the chapter, said Atticus. Heck was being kind of nervous and everything. Mr. Tate found his neck and rubbed it. He said, Bob Yule's lying on the ground under that tree yonder with a kitchen knife stuck up under his ribs. He's dead, Mr. Finch. The fact that it's a kitchen knife tells me that it was Boo Radley who killed him, and he didn't fall on his own knife. In the next chapter, you're going to see where Hecate said he had confiscated a switchblade, pocket knife, switchblade, off of some man, up some drunk. And of course, in this story, what we read today, Bob Yule was drunk. Scout said she could smell it on him when she was wrestling around with him. But the fact that there's a butcher knife stuck up under his ribs, to me, I think makes it fairly clear what exactly happened. Bob Yule didn't trip and fall on his knife. He wouldn't have been carrying a butcher knife either. I'm sure Bob Yule had a switchblade that he carried around with him all the time, and that's what he was going to use. And we're going to find out tomorrow that he actually rammed it, through the ham, a number of times trying to get the Scout as well. Obviously, what had happened was that Boo Radley, for whatever reason, he was outside. I don't think he necessarily heard the shuffling that was going on. I think he was a guardian angel, so to speak, for Scout and Jim. He wasn't going to disturb them, but he was going to kind of be their protector as they walked through those dark woods that night. And he had, for whatever reason, maybe just as protection or whatever, he just brought a butcher knife from his house. That wasn't, I don't believe that was Bob Yule's butcher knife. First of all, not certain that Bob Yule would have a butcher knife. He didn't have anything else. He didn't keep track of himself or care about himself or his family, and who knows what the kids ate and when they ate and how much they ate, if it had anything. So anyway, that's where we are. That's where we ended today. Tomorrow we're going to get to the last few chapters, and Hecate's going to talk about how it would be such a sin to subject Boo Radley to all public acknowledgments and everything. We'll talk about that tomorrow. So anyway, this is the next to last lesson that we have. I'll finish it off tomorrow. Really sad, one of my saddest teaching times of the year. I just hate to finish this book. My kids, of course, they're still rather enraptured with it. They've fallen along really well. I had my book giveaway yesterday. The kids were excited. Everyone who put their name in the pot, I ended up giving a book to. I had two that I had two that I had bought that are just, they were exact duplicates of these, the same thing as these, but the other 7 that I had bought were hardback as well, but they were not published by the same people. They were not, they're nice books. This is larger print, bigger pages and larger print. But the kids, I had a couple kids decided they were just go ahead and follow along in class with their new books, even though I have books provided for them already. So that's about it for today. And like I said, tomorrow will be the final lesson number 25. So you have a good evening, Ken, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.